Proverbs chapter 7. My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live, and my law as the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers, write them upon the table of thine heart, saying to wisdom, Thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman, that they may keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which flattereth with her words. For at the window of my house I looked through my casement, and I beheld among the simple ones, I discerned among the youths, a certain man void of understanding, passing through the streets near her corner, and he went the way of her house. In the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night, and behold, there met him a woman with the attire of an harlot and subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. Now is she without, now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner. So she caught him, and kissed him, and with an impudent face said unto him, I have peace offerings with me. This day have I paid my vows. Therefore came I forth to meet thee, diligently to seek thy face, and I have found thee. I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, with carved works, with fine linen of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the good man is not at home, he is gone a long journey. He hath taken a bag of money with him, and will come home at the day appointed. With her much a fair speech she caused him to yield, with the flattering of her lips she forced him. He goeth after her straightway as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks. Till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteneth to the snare, and knoweth not that it is for his life. Hearken unto me now, therefore, all ye children, and attend unto the words of my mouth. Let not thine heart decline to her ways, go not astray in her paths. For she hath cast down many wounded, yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this passage. Thank you for the opportunity to consider your word. Lord, I pray that you just help us understand the importance of making wisdom our close sister, to make wisdom within us, and to have a familiarity with wisdom, so much so that it will prevent us from being entangled by the adulterous harlot that is wicked and evil. Lord, I pray that you just help us to be preserved and safe, and understand the difference between the harlot and the wise woman. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so as we continue on into the scriptures, of course, we've talked about how that the book of Proverbs is like a progression of getting to know wisdom. First of all, it's the parents introducing their children to wisdom, saying, "Hey, this is wisdom you ought to know. You need to learn wisdom. You need to be with wisdom. You need to help wisdom. You need to get familiar with wisdom. You need to bind wisdom within your heart. You need to, and then a progression of hearing about wisdom, learning about wisdom." Having a desire for wisdom and seeking wisdom, and now we are at the stage of familiarity with wisdom, getting it to where you are comfortable around wisdom. And then, of course, we know at the end of the book, it is to where it's no longer just a brother-sister type of relationship with wisdom, but rather it is a full-fledged marriage. It is a union that can never be separated, and it is one of strength and valor and wonder that can never be compared unto. There's as far above rubies, nothing can be compared unto that woman of wisdom. And so we see here the stage, chapter 7, is getting to be familiar with wisdom. It says, "My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live, and my law as the apple of thine eye." So in order to get wisdom, of course, we've started from the very beginning to hear the commandments of the Lord. We see in chapter 1 and so forth, to know wisdom, the instruction to perceive the words of understanding, to be able to even, at the very beginning, chapter 1 is similar to where you see the girl across the room, and you say, hey, that might be an interesting girl to get to know. You never spoken, you never heard anything, but you've seen her across the way. You've noticed her out of the corner of your eye. And then your parents say, hey, I know that parent's father. The wisdom in the preceding chapters will be compared to be growing up with wisdom's father, which is God the Father. And it's like saying, hey, the father of the son is saying, hey, I know that man's, that woman's father. Let me introduce you to her. And that's kind of the gist of this book. He is introducing her to his son, just as you would introduce a good friend's daughter to your son for a lasting relationship. You say, hey, your daughter would be wonderful for my son. So too is the father here in this picture saying to God, God, my father, your daughter, wisdom, your spirit, wisdom, would go well with my son. I would like to introduce them. And then he develops this relationship and he develops this friendship. And he doesn't just develop it and then 2 weeks later they're married and they have this wonderful marriage, but rather it is a picture of, as little kids, like if you were a neighbor and your two neighbors had the children of the same age, a boy and a girl, one has a boy, one has a girl, and then you say, hey, one day I would love it if my kids had a family together. So you would raise them together. You would say, hey, get to know the neighbor's son, get to know the neighbor's daughter. Hey, be friends with them. And what do they do as little children? They get to know each other like a brother and a sister, as friends do, as they become familiar with each other. He learns, the boy learns how to treat a little girl. The little girl learns how to respect little boys, and so forth, and then they get a familiarity with each other, so they develop a respect and a friendship, and just kind of also kind of being a little rowdy. Sometimes they get in arguments, sometimes they get in fights, and learning how to, under the supervision of their parents, they're learning to be familiar with one another, and they're learning to resolve conflicts. They're learning to live life together. And it is here, as this picture is, he's instructing his son, hey, this is how you have a relationship with the little girl. Hey, this is how you have a relationship with the little boy. He says, keep my commandments and live, and my law is the apple of my eye. As you are with her, keep in mind what I told you about her. Don't pull her hair. Don't push her to the ground. Don't punch her. It's like as you're raising your son, what do you teach the boy how to treat ladies, right? Little girls and so forth. And you they can play with each other. They can hang out with each other, and they get to know each other, become friendly and familiar with each other, just like a brother and a sister would, friends in the neighborhood would, and they get to know each other. Keep my commandments and live, and my law is the apple of thine eye. As you are developing this, bind them upon thy fingers, write them upon the tables of thine heart. And then say unto wisdom, thou art my sister. And call understanding thy kinswoman. So he's raising his son, or he's attempting to have this environment to where he is very familiar with them. It's not as if he never knew wisdom. And then, one day he woke up, dad suddenly wakes up out of a stupor and decides one day that, hey, now we're all going to go to church after living a life of, away from church, and a life of drunkenness, a life of wickedness. And then all of a sudden he wakes up and tells his son, who he raised in wickedness, who were raised in stupor and squalor. And then all of a sudden he's going to say, hey, now you need to live this life. And the son's going to be like, why do I need to live that life? No, it's one of, from a very early age, raising the son to have a respect for wisdom, just as you would have respect for a little girl or a little boy. As they grow up and mature, they're going to know how to treat one another. When you grow up having a reverent respect for the opposite sex, if you will, the little boy respecting the little girl and the little girl respecting the little boy, and then they having a friendship and a friendliness with one another, they will respect women of all calibers a lot more than they would if they never had a relationship with a little boy or a little girl growing up. They would know that they're not objects. They would know that they have a mind. They would know that they have a relationship and a a love and a care for one another, a brotherly and a sisterly love and a care. And so that if they grow up in that environment, then your children are then going to, when they see another boy or girl that they don't know, they're going to say, hey, I know how to treat that boy or girl because of how I was raised with wisdom, how I was raised with the commandments of my parents, and how I was raised to respect women and to respect men and so forth. We see a lot of times these broken homes. We see a lot of times people running around without any commandments, without any development of their children. And then what happens? The women become sex objects. The women become, they don't have any direction, and the women start hating men. And the disrespect that goes around, the hatred that they have. They sleep around, but they never make any bonds. They never make any marriages. Everybody is out for themselves, and they all end up hurting each other. They have no respect. They have no care. They abuse each other. They abuse and are abused because they had no care to discern between the wise woman and the harlot. To them, they're raised with harlots, and therefore everyone's a harlot. To them, they're raised with simple people, and therefore everybody is a stupid person. So we see how this develops, is that developing a child in the right relationship, in the right environment, will protect them from treating people wrong. Here in this passage it says, my son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. In other words, lay them up, store them. Take them and store them. As you are growing up, you're going to be learning things, and you're going to be storing them, line upon line. You're going to be here a little and there a little. You're going to be learning and growing and developing. He says, to lay them up, my commandments with thee. You got to store them up. Keep my commandments and live, and my law as the apple of thine eye. The law is the apple of the eye. Remember the law? Again, from the previous chapters and from this passage here. In chapter 1, the apple of the eye is my son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. So we see here that the son is being encouraged to listen to the father, hear his instruction, and the apple of his eye is the law of his mother. The law of his mother. He learns to hear his mother and respect his mother. And as he's learning from his mother and respecting from his mother and keeping he's keeping his ears. The commandments of his father is in his ears as he's going about his life. And in his eye, as he looks at the little girl, he sees his mother. He sees how his mother would want that little girl treated. He hears his father, how he should treat that little girl. The simple don't have that instruction. They're just walking around stupidly and dumbly and just kind of what happens may happen. Live and let live. There's nothing in his eyes. There's nothing in his ears to prevent him. My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live, and my law is the apple of thine eye. So we see in this picture is that the child, as he's growing, as he's living, as he's adventuring out to develop relationships, is always constantly hearing his father's voice and seeing his mother in his eye. The pupil of his eye, the apple of thine eye. To when you see that girl and you're treating that girl, is that the way you would treat your mother? Would you do that to your own mother? You would not. You would not do that. And the father is saying, hey, you're going to obey, and you're going to treat that little girl just as you would treat your mother in respect and so forth. Keep my commandments and live, and the law and my law as the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers. Bind them upon thy fingers. You think about that. He's binding them upon his fingers. You think about how oftentimes people teach children. Point number 1, point number 2, and then how many commandments are there? 10 commandments. Basically, and then honor thy father and thy mother. Do not lie. Do not steal. You got all the commandments. And so forth. You bind them. So when you see finger number 1, that's the little song. Be careful, little hands, what you do. so forth. And that's similar to what he's doing. He has, each finger is named after each of the commandments. And then maybe his parents have parental commandments, be good, be kind, so forth. And so he's laying up in his heart the commandments, and it's bound to his fingers. He's literally got on his fingers, when he looks at his thumb, he knows one of his parents' commandments. If he looks at his finger, he knows the other commandment. And so that's the way he is so familiar with it. It's in his ears, it's on his eyes, and it's in his fingers. So when he reaches with a hand, he sees, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet, thou shalt not do this, do not do this, and all that stuff. He sees, literally, because he's raised to see the commandments on his hands. His voice in his ears, in his eyes, and in his hands. And so as he lives his life, it is all about him. Write them upon the tables of thine heart. The tables of thine heart. Think about that, the tables of thine heart. He says, and of course we understand that the apostle also talks about that in Romans as well. The tables of thine heart. Even the heathen have written on their heart the word of God, if you will. Verse 4, say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman. So wisdom and understanding. Thou art my sister is the relationship he now has as growing up with him, getting familiar with her, is as a sister. And then understanding as thy kinswoman. In other words, a cousin, or as an aunt, or a niece, if you will, thy kinswoman, somebody close to you in relationship. So you may not always understand. Understanding may not always be there, but your sister, when you wake up every day, usually in the same household, as you grow up, your sister is always going to be there. So wisdom needs to be as your sister in growing up. And similar, that she's always there constantly with you, and you respect her, and you take care of her, and you nurture her, and you have that loving brotherly relationship as you're learning how to live life with her. And call understanding thy kinswoman. You may not always understand, but they come to visit every once in a while. Every once in a while you get some understanding, and you have the similar familiar relationship with understanding. As you grow up and develop a relationship with wisdom, understanding will come to you occasionally. That they may keep thee from the strange woman. So we notice here, we have the father's words, we have the mother's eyes, we have the commandments bound to the fingers, and we have the familiar relationships that he is familiar with. The females in his family is his sister, wisdom, his kinswoman, aunt, cousin, whatever, kinswoman is understanding. So when he finally meets up with other women outside of the household, what is he going to have in relationship to them to know how to treat them? Respect, honor, dignity, as a brother and a sister. You don't treat them as sex objects. You don't treat them as something to be taken advantage of and to be abused and harmed and hurt and disrespected and taken. You treat them in the respect of, if you're going to develop a relationship with a woman, that you will make sure that she is fully consenting, and that you have a covenant, and that your family get to know each other, and you develop this relationship that is not just Twitter patience, but it is with understanding and dignity and love and care, and so forth. And so he says that they may keep thee from the strange woman. So when you don't know how to treat a woman, you don't have a relationship with a woman, you don't know if this person's a good or bad or wise or evil. You don't know that strange woman. That's a stranger to you. So if you want to know how to treat women, you have to do verses 1 through 5 to be protected and to have wisdom with the relationships that you develop outside of the household. He says that they may keep thee from the strange woman, and also from the stranger with flattereth with her words. When you hear the words of a strange woman, and you hear somebody who's trying to flatter you to get something from you, You'll be able to discern. Your emotions go wild. Oh, the girl's looking at me. The girl's talking to me. You will already be able to go beyond that. Why? Because you've already been familiar with your sister, with your kinswoman, and so forth. You've developed a relationship through your mother and your father, and this family relationship that is wholesome and healthy has developed you a comfortability around women and people of the opposite sex, and men and women, and therefore, when you are fully prepared to go out into the world and develop new relationships, you're not going to be surprised at the first pretty eyes that come along. You're going to say, hey, what does she sound like? What is she actually saying? Otherwise you're going to be like, oh, she sounds so pretty, she looks so good, and all this stuff. You'll be thinking on a body level. But of course we understand that a relationship needs to be developed not just on a physical level, but also on a physical, mindful, and a spiritual level. The mindful being the connection with your soul. And so if you are only looking at the beauty level as an object, and then once your physical cravings are satisfied and you don't care about the spirit or the soul, then that object is going to be tossed aside like a dirty rag. It's not going to be of any value. But if you develop a relationship with your kinswomen and your sisters in a spiritual, soulful, a mindful, and a physical relationship in the family, you're going to know how to treat people outside of the family, not as objects, but a threefold being. You're going to treat them with dignity and respect. And when somebody tries to treat you like just an object to be desired rather than a three-part being in the image of God, then you're going to look beyond, and you're not going to be daunted by somebody who just desires you in a certain way and not in a threefold way. He says that they may keep them from the strange woman. They may keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which flattereth with her words. Flattereth with her words. Us guys can be, we can be flattered. We can see a pretty lady and that pretty lady says, "Hey, I like you." It's like, oh la la. Your heart goes woohoo. But you don't want to just stop there. So many relationships, as the simple one here, stops at that stage, at that level, to where they can't get beyond it. A lot of relationships stop at the physical level, and then when they try to have a relationship, they realize that they are not mated properly because it's only physical, and then there's no soul, mindfulness. There's no spiritual connection. There are different religions. There are different cultural background. There's so many things that are different, and they end up ruining their lives because why? They looked at people at their bodies only, at the physical relationship, or at the flirtatious words, and they never moved beyond that. You see, the physical body will break down. The physical body can only be good for a certain amount of time, but the soul and the spirit, they will last forever. They will last forever. And yet, if you don't have a relationship based upon a threefold being, then you will never be content in that relationship. So many times people also, as a side note as well, is that a lot of times people say, well, it doesn't matter what the body is, it just matters about their soul and spirit. That's incorrect as well. You need to look at all three. You need to look at all three, and you need to realize that, no, we are a three-part being, not a two-part being. Some people will devalue a certain aspect of the three-part being. The relationship with your mother and your sister and your kinswoman will develop and help, especially with your father. With that drive to develop families and so forth, will give you that aspect of a three-part being. You think about this is how that the father will give you that desire to continue the family name, that desire to have a family of your own. The father will develop into you a respect for the physical aspects of a family, the desire to have that and to build that and to structure. The mother as well will show you how to have a respect for the spirit of a woman, the respect for developing the respect for women on a spiritual level. She develops in the law. The law will bring you to Christ, if you will. The law is carnal, but it is developed to bring you to the spiritual level. but then also you have the kinswoman and you have the sister, which will develop your relationship on a communication level, on a mindful level, on a soul level. These three women in your lives will develop the three-part being that you are. The husband and the wife, and the kinswoman and the sister will develop into you the physical, the mindful, and the spiritual that you need to be that healthy three-part being, and to not be deceived by somebody who is only after one of the parts and wants to discard the rest, and to abuse and use and abuse in the wrong ways. So if you listen to all three of these, hearing your father's words, seeing your mother, and then speaking with and binding upon your hands the fingers, and writing on the table of your heart, and then having the relationship with your sister and your kinswoman to have that soulfulness, then you will have a healthy, well-balanced life and relationship with those who will come your way, and you will not be deceived by anybody trying to take that away from you. He says, the strange woman from the stranger which flattereth with her lips and with her words. So this is the prevention. And of course, we're thinking about this on the physical level, and as we continue on to the strange woman, and we continue on with the simple man and the strange woman who never developed verses 1 through 5, never developed that in his life. He was just very simple. It doesn't say that this person was bad or evil or wicked. It's just somebody who was not raised in the proper way, was not raised with these elements to guide and protect him and to save him from this. To where we see this impudent woman is there who stubbornly draws him away, and these people are just going after their baser lust. They have not developed their soul or their spirit in any mindful way. They have just simply catered to the beast within, if you will, and the lust and desires of their flesh. And they end up using and abusing people because they don't have a healthy relationship in any aspect of the three-part being. And so we think about this as being the three-part being. We see how they're developing a healthy aspect of the spirit, soul, and body. We see this person who does not have a healthy aspect is just simple in life, just never developed, never educated, and is easily deceived and drawn away. You see and hear people about having 5 or 6 children by 5 or 6 men, and so forth, and the one that they're with is not their husband, and so forth. Why are they in that situation? It's because they're following the lust of their heart. And they're not thinking about the soul or the spirit or anything like that. They get caught up in the moment. It says, "For at the window of my house I looked through the casement, and behold, among the simple ones I discerned among the youth a young man void of understanding." He had no kinswoman. He had no one to guide him. Void of understanding, passing through the street near her corner, and he went the way to her house. He went to the way of her house. He enjoyed going the way of her house. In other words, he wasn't ignorant in the sense that he didn't know that there was a such thing as a harlot or a whore or anything. Perhaps maybe they stole a glance from the street corner. Perhaps maybe they saw each other and they waved hi. Perhaps they had a friendly demeanor as he traveled from the fields home for the night. Long day's work. He's a young, strapping man, simple but strong and healthy, and well known in the community as a hard worker, somebody who does well. What's that old saying? It's play hard, party hard, or work hard, party hard is the phrase, or something like that. That type of guy. He's just simple, good old boy. He's just working hard, coming home from a hard day's work. And then as she is probably the husband, you hear these stories about Europe where the old aristocrat, the old man, maybe good-natured and such, but marries a younger woman. And he goes off to some sort of trade or market, or he's going off to do some big deal, and maybe he's a merchant. You think about the people in Venice, And then the woman's left at home with nothing to do. She's twiddling her thumbs. She has no hobbies. She's not like the Proverbs 31 woman where she's buying a field and considereth it and making wares for her husband to take on his trip and his travels. She doesn't have that relationship with her husband. She's just sitting there as well. She is simple as well. And then she is just minding her own business. She's bored. She has nothing to do. And then as she looks out as well, just as Solomon. Everybody's looking out at their casements, I guess. Yeah, everybody's looking at the neighbor's house. And everybody's being a snoop here, I guess. But that he's looking out the casement. Solomon sees this woman, sees this man, and perhaps maybe this has been going on for a long time. He's gone away. The good man of the house has oftentimes gone away. She starts making this imagination in her heart. She starts desiring somebody to have a relationship with, but she has nobody to develop that with, and she has not given herself over to developing her house. She is simply sitting there looking out what could be in her life because she's not happy with what she has. And then she looks out and she's considering it, and he says, passing through the street near her corner, he went the way of her house. He always going by her corner every day. Usually when they're coming back home from the fields, they're going to be coming to the same through the same way. So if your field is out on the east side of town, you're not going to go in through the west side of town, right? You're always going to go in to your home the same way. And so perhaps as a simple man does, enjoying life, he's going to go to the local tavern, grab a drink, enjoy with his friends and whatever, and his buddies, and they're just going to enjoy an afternoon after a hard day's work. And then he walks home. He sees it's in the twilight. It's in the dark. It's about ready to get dark, and they want to get home before it gets dark so they can get home. And he sees her. He waves hi. They're all friendly. Oh, hey, we enjoy each other's company. And then they steal a glance, and they still smile, and then every day maybe he even blows a kiss to her. Hello there, fair maiden. Or maybe he does some sort of nice little gesture and stuff. We notice here, of course, this is also, as he's looking at this and he's giving us this example, we notice here he says that, and behold, there met him a woman with the attire of an harlot and subtle of heart. We notice this, that maybe perhaps it's not necessarily, she is not a harlot as in she's not destitute. She doesn't have necessarily the harlotry needs where she says, if I don't sell my body, I'm going to starve and die tomorrow. That's not this type of woman. This is not somebody who's poor and beggarly on the street. This is somebody who has a good home, a good house. She has a good life, and yet she is looking for something that she does not have. The lust of a strapping young man, the physical desires that she can't have because her husband's on a long journey. And they start maybe strike up a conversation every once in a while, wave hi, and they imagine things together. And him being simple goes right along with it. He says, in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night, and behold, there met him a woman with the attire of a harlot and subtle of heart. She decided, hey, I'm going to act on my impulses. I'm going to dress up. I'm going to prepare the way. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to fulfill the imaginations of my heart. And of course, we see, of course, the focus is on the son. The focus is on the simple man. But also, I would say that, we may not go into this tonight. Perhaps we will do a part 2. But I want to focus a little bit on the man tonight. But we will look at this woman a little bit more next Sunday. But we see how she is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. She has the desire to go out and to do certain things. And compared to the Proverbs 31 woman, she also goes out of her house. But what does she do? She builds her house. Everything she does outside of her house is to build her house. But the simple woman, everything she does is to build her imagination, to build her basically to build her own desires, to fulfill her own lust. She thinks not of other people. She doesn't even really think of this one man. She doesn't even consider what might happen to him if her husband were to find out. But let's look down to verse 21. With her much fair speech She caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips, she forced him. She forced him. Well, it didn't take much force, did it? But she forced him. She forced him. Maybe he was like, wait a second, this may not really be something that I should be doing. Maybe there was a little bit of a conscious thought there, and she's like, "Don't worry, the good man's gone. There's no going to be harm." Sometimes the simple, I think we'll see some of the Proverbs where it talks about the rod for the simple man, it'll drive evil far from him, and so forth. And so we understand that the simple man, that baser instinct, does not like to be hurt and harmed. It's like, oh, this will hurt me if I do this. If somebody finds out, I will do this. But she says, with her much fair speeches, he hath taken a bag of money, and he won't be here. You'll be okay. He goeth after her straightway, as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks. You think about an ox, they don't really know where they're going. You think about all the hamburgers that we have. You think those cows really know what's going to happen to them, or even in a sense care? They're just mooing and mawing and going along, and they're just being drawn where they go. They live their life for our food. And so too is with this woman. He's living his life as if he were her food, her cravings. She wants a chocolate bar. She wants to go out and party. She wants to go have fun. She's doing it not for his benefit, not for the benefit of her household, but she's doing it for her own desires. And he is her food. She doesn't treat him like a brother, doesn't treat him like a kinswoman, doesn't treat him like a father to her. No, she does none of that for him. He goeth after her straightway, as an ox goeth to the slaughter. If you don't have a healthy relationship with wisdom as a sister, or understanding as a kinswoman, or the law of God as if it were your mother and the apple of your eye, and as the words of Christ, as if it were the very words of your own Father, if you don't have that sort of relationship with the Word of God, then you're going to be a simple person. You're not going to be an evil person or necessarily a bad person. You may be a hard worker. You may have a desire to provide for your family, but you will be enamored by what you could have, enamored by fulfilling your own flesh, enamored by those desires. He says, he goeth after her straightway as an ox. Straightway. Maybe there's some hesitancy with the punishment, but then when that's all taken away, nobody knows, nobody's going to see. And then he straightway goes with her. He's all in. He goeth after her straightway, as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteneth to the snare, and knoweth not that it is for his life. When you consume people as food, you will consume their life. You will destroy their life. And this is the simple don't realize that their actions will destroy lives. The impudent woman with her imagination desiring something that she cannot have or ought not to have, she does not realize she's destroying men's lives. Women have a great and wonderful power, but she uses it as wisdom. We understand, we talked about this before, is how that a good woman wants to retain the attributes of wisdom and model that for her husband. And as she's developing a relationship with boys and girls and stuff, she's going to develop it as if a sister or a brother would with each other and develop that relationship. And she's going to model for her potential mates the virtues of wisdom. The virtues of wisdom. But here, this woman did not model any of that for this young man. This woman did not model any of that for her husband. She was not loyal to her vows. She did not bind any wisdom upon her hands. She did not listen to the words of God. In this passage, it talks about how that she made a sacrifice for the Lord, and she was religious, but she wasn't thinking about the Lord. She just thought that as long as I made a sacrifice, it'd be all good. It'd be all good. He says, till the dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteneth to the snare, and knoweth not that it is for his life. The simple, we need to realize that that man or that woman that we're developing a relationship with, they have a life. They have people that love them. They have people that care for them. That man or that woman that we're potentially going to have and develop a relationship, they have a father and they have a mother. They have a sister. They have kinswomen. They have people that they live life with. And you also have people that you live life with. And you need to realize that they have an influence. They have a desire to see the best for your life. And if you only look for the cravings of a simple man, of a brutish man, of somebody who is just desiring the thing that they ought not to have it out of wedlock, to do those things that are wicked, just because you want to crave your flesh, you're going to destroy your life. That moment of craving is going to end your life. He says, verse 24, "Hearken unto me now, therefore, O ye children, and attend unto the words of my mouth." Notice this. Starts out the son, and then he says, look at the simple man, look at this harlot, and then notice he says, "Hearken to me now, therefore, O ye children." This hearkening is not just for his son, but it's also for the simple man and the woman, the married woman, who's looking beyond what she can have. He says, "Attend unto the words of my mouth. Let not thine heart decline to her ways. Go not astray in her paths." And this here, we see the harlot, we see the woman who's doing this. Now he's saying her ways. So we notice here that now this her is not really this woman. It's not really the harlot. Her ways is the spirit of this woman. See, a good woman binds her spirit to wisdom and models that for all to see. This woman here, she is binding herself to another spirit. The further on, we'll see this chapter that wisdom is compared to another spirit, and this woman, she is going to the heart. In her heart is not wisdom. Remember, we looked at the previous passage where he encourages, "My son, keep my father's commandment and forsake not the lie of the mother. Bind them continually upon thy heart. Tie them about thy neck." So we see that he needs to bind wisdom within his heart, and so for he says, "Let not thine heart decline into her ways." There's another type of wisdom. And we're going to look at that in preceding sermons and messages in the next chapters, that we are not to decline into her path. When you allow this spirit to enter into your heart, you'll become the simple man, you'll become led to the slaughter, and you'll become a woman. And this is why he says, "Oh, you children," because he's saying, watch out, woman, this spirit's in your heart. You're going to see the spirit decline and destroy your life. "Let not thine heart decline to her ways. Go not astray in her paths, for she hath cast down many wounded, yea, many strong men have been slain by her." You think about all the great mighty men that have done great wonderful things, past and present, David, Solomon, all the great men, how that it was not anything but it was a woman that brought them down, Bathsheba. Not necessarily evil in herself. It was David's fault, but it was a woman, the lust of his heart, that brought him down. Solomon, 700 wives, 300 concubines. It's not a good situation, even though it was for a lot of contracts and treaties and stuff for different nations. But that whole situation. And we can go on. We can list all names. And we can think about, even in modern times, how many pastors have been cast down because of a woman. How many times have great men of God been besmirched because of their relationships with women. It says, "Let not thine heart decline into her ways. Go not, for she hath cast down many wounded, yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death." Now, again, next week we'll look at the lady here in this situation. But the spirit that she's binding within her heart is the way to hell. It's not necessarily her that's the way to hell. This woman's not the way to hell. It is the spirit that she's binding in her heart. Just as the young man needs to bind in his heart wisdom, and the young woman needs to model wisdom as she grows up. So too, we need to be careful not to bind our hearts to this wicked foolishness, for we'll call it foolishness for now, is the foolishness bound in the heart of this woman is going to be tied up in there, and then she's going to be one with this foolishness. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. So consider this, the importance of wisdom, the importance of not simply being simple. It's not wrong being simple, but you don't want to stay there. You want to seek wisdom. You need to bind it. You need to strive for it. It takes effort. It takes work to get to a point to where you're not simple anymore. Next week we'll look at this woman with her attributes and those things that are drawing her to bind the wrong spirit within her heart, and those things that this is similar to opposite of what a virtuous woman is. This is the attire of a harlot, a woman who's putting on the attire, a picture of a harlotry, and those things that she has in her life that are causing her to go down to hell, and that we ought to be warned and not have in our lives. So the things that she is listed in her character traits, we want to model the opposite, as especially as we looked at the young man. Young man needs to become wise and have understanding and develop this proper relationship, and the woman needs to avoid these characteristics in order to have a virtuous, honorable life. So consider these things. Let's seek wisdom and have that wonderful relationship that we ought to have with it. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this passage. Thank you for the opportunity to consider your words. Lord, I pray that you just be with us as we consider this passage, and next week as we consider the warning to the woman and so forth, and that we will take this and take the warning that Solomon gives to us. And Lord, I pray that you just be with us throughout the week. And just I pray. Amen.